Bryan Kohberger's prosecutors never expected their own evidence to betray them, but hidden photographs, rare fibers, a secret storage unit, and an unsigned confession forced them to question everything they thought they knew, turning a seemingly airtight murder case into a chilling hunt for an unseen mastermind. The courtroom lights flickered as the prosecution team filed into the hushed chamber, carrying folders thicker than anyone had anticipated. Weeks of headlines had already painted the case as a simple story: a quiet graduate student accused of a brutal crime, with DNA evidence and phone records said to tie him directly to the murders. Journalists filled the back rows, ready to report what they assumed would be a routine pretrial hearing. Yet, behind the locked door of the prosecution's private office, a far more complex reality had begun to surface. Investigators had recently recovered a sealed box of photographs from an overlooked security camera on the edge of the crime scene, and what they found inside unsettled even the most seasoned detectives. The images did not simply show footprints in the snow or the familiar outline of the suspect's car. They revealed a shadowy figure trailing one of the victims days before the killings, a figure whose clothing and posture were unmistakably different from the man now sitting in a jail cell. This discovery was more than an anomaly. It was a crack in the foundation of the entire case. Prosecutors who had once spoken with certainty now exchanged worried glances over late-night coffee. If the figure was not the accused, then who had been stalking the victims? Some believed it might be an unknown accomplice, while others whispered about a completely separate suspect who had managed to slip past every search and interview. The tension was palpable as the lead prosecutor considered how this evidence might reshape the narrative that had already captured national attention. They knew that if the photographs became public too soon, the defense would seize the opportunity to paint their client as a victim of misdirection, and the carefully built case could collapse before the trial even began. The photographs themselves were haunting. Grainy but unmistakable, they captured moments of someone waiting in the shadows, following from a calculated distance, and finally disappearing into the night. No fingerprints had been found on the camera, and no one in the neighborhood recognized the silhouette. For the first time since the arrest, the team faced the possibility that their suspect might not have been acting alone or might not have been the killer at all. Outside the courthouse, reporters continued to speculate about motives and timelines, unaware of the silent storm gathering within the prosecution's walls. Inside, the air felt heavy with doubt. The case that had seemed unshakable was beginning to feel like a puzzle with missing pieces, and the people responsible for delivering justice were left questioning whether they had been following the wrong trail from the very beginning. As the hearings moved forward, the prosecutors tried to maintain their confident posture, but behind their closed office door, the pressure mounted. A forensic specialist had delivered a report that threatened to undo the neat timeline they had worked so hard to create. Among the many samples collected from the crime scene, a small bundle of fibers stood out. At first glance, they seemed ordinary, just a few strands clinging to the edge of a broken window frame, but under the microscope they revealed an unusual weave, a rare fabric imported from overseas and typically used only in custom garments. Records from customs showed that only 3 shipments of that fabric had entered the country in the past year. None were addressed to Bryan or to anyone in his circle of acquaintances. The discovery forced the team to reconsider what they thought they knew. If the fabric did not belong to him, then someone else had left it behind. Late-night meetings stretched into the early hours as prosecutors and investigators debated their next move. Some argued that the fibers could be explained as accidental transfer from an unknown visitor, but others worried it was evidence of an entirely different suspect. The tension was sharp as they weighed whether revealing the information would strengthen the defense and weaken their case in the public eye. Meanwhile, the defense team began to hear whispers of the finding, though no official report had been shared. Rumors of a mysterious fabric began circulating in online forums, adding a new layer of speculation to an already sensational trial. Reporters outside the courthouse sensed the shift in mood and pressed for answers, but the prosecution remained silent, unwilling to expose a detail they could not yet explain. The specialist who had made the discovery dug deeper, tracing the fabric's distribution network and finding that the few documented shipments were linked to high-end tailors in distant cities. None had any connection to the accused, and none had records of selling to anyone who fit the profile of a known suspect. Each new fact widened the gap between the evidence and the man on trial. Inside the office, the lead prosecutor stared at the photographs from the first discovery and then at the report about the fibers, feeling the weight of uncertainty settle like a stone. The case that once seemed straightforward now felt fragile. With every new piece of evidence, the possibility grew that they were pursuing the wrong person, and the fear of allowing a real killer to remain free began to overshadow their carefully rehearsed arguments. Weeks later, just as the team was beginning to adapt to the unsettling fabric discovery, another revelation pushed the case further into uncertainty. A junior investigator, reviewing old property records for any overlooked connections, stumbled across a rental unit registered under a false name. The location was unremarkable, a small storage facility on the outskirts of town, but something about the timing of its lease caught attention. It had been rented only a week before the murders and left unpaid immediately after. A quiet visit to the site turned into a jolt of dread. Inside, stacked neatly in the dim light, were weathered journals, folded maps marked with red ink, and a single burner phone with its battery removed. The contents of the journals were cryptic. Pages filled with numbers, fragmented sentences, and rough sketches of streets near the victims' homes suggested careful planning by someone who understood how to avoid detection. The maps, too, were chilling. Several included hand-drawn routes leading directly to the crime scene, complete with notations about blind spots and back entrances. Yet nothing in the unit linked the items to Bryan. The signature on the lease was false, the payment had been made with cash, and no fingerprints were found on the journals or the phone. When technicians powered up the burner phone, they uncovered a trail of text messages exchanged with an unknown contact. The messages hinted at surveillance and contained coordinates matching the victim's daily routines. Most disturbing was a string of time-stamped notes that placed the device near the crime scene only hours before the murders. The prosecutors felt the ground shift beneath them. If another person had been monitoring the victims so closely, it complicated every theory they had built. Debate erupted within the team. Some feared the discovery suggested a hidden accomplice working alongside Bryan, while others whispered the unthinkable, that the real perpetrator had successfully framed him. The lead prosecutor, reading through the journal pages late at night, sensed a calculating mind at work, someone who planned not just the crime, but also how to mislead investigators. Outside the legal offices, the public remained unaware of the new evidence, but inside, the tension grew sharp. Every new fact widened the possibility that they were preparing to try the wrong person. The discovery of the storage unit with its eerie maps and coded writings didn't just complicate the prosecution's path. It threatened to dismantle the very foundation of their case, leaving them to question whether justice was slipping further from their grasp with every passing day. The trial's momentum slowed to a near halt when an unsigned letter arrived at the district attorney's office late on a rainy evening. The envelope bore no return address and smelled faintly of smoke, as though it had been kept near a fire. Inside, a single sheet of lined paper carried a message written in a hurried, uneven hand. It described the location of a security camera that investigators had never cataloged, positioned on a utility pole across the street from the victim's home. The anonymous writer claimed the camera had captured the true sequence of events on the night of the murders and warned that key footage was being overlooked. A small team set out immediately to locate the camera, unsure if the letter was a cruel prank. Yet there it was, half hidden behind tangled wires and a cracked metal casing. Retrieving the recording required delicate work. The device was old and partially corroded, but a technician managed to salvage fragments of video. When the footage flickered onto the screen, a heavy silence settled over the room. Grainy and dark, the recording nonetheless showed a figure slipping from the house only minutes after the estimated time of death. The person moved quickly but with a distinct stride, taller and broader than the man sitting in jail. The discovery ignited urgent debate. Prosecutors realized that revealing the video would invite immediate attacks on their theory of the case. Defense attorneys would claim it as proof of their client's innocence, while the public would question how investigators could have missed something so critical. Some on the team argued the footage might depict an accomplice, someone who helped commit the crime and then vanished. Others believed it could point to an entirely different suspect, a phantom who had orchestrated the murders and planted misleading clues to trap Bryan. Adding to the unease was the mystery of the letter's sender. Handwriting analysis offered no matches, and no fingerprints or DNA could be recovered from the paper. It was as if the messenger had wanted only to guide them to the camera and then disappear without a trace. Each passing hour raised the stakes. If they withheld the video, they risked condemning an innocent man. If they released it prematurely, the entire trial could spiral into chaos. Behind the courtroom's calm exterior, prosecutors faced a quiet crisis, aware that the fragile balance between justice and deception was tipping toward an outcome none of them could confidently control. As the trial edged toward its most critical phase, a paralegal working late in the prosecution's evidence room made a discovery that changed the atmosphere overnight. While organizing boxes of exhibits, she noticed a thin, unmarked envelope wedged beneath a stack of routine reports. The paper was brittle, as though it had been hidden for months. Inside lay a handwritten confession, signed only with a single alias. The letter's tone was cold and methodical, describing the night of the murders with details never released to the public. The exact position of a fallen lamp, the sound of a specific door hinge, the sequence in which the victims were attacked. Every word suggested the author had been present during the crime. The handwriting matched notes found earlier in the storage unit, and a faint fingerprint on the back of the page bore no resemblance to Bryan's or anyone in the database. For the lead prosecutor, the implications were devastating. Revealing the confession would almost certainly dismantle their case, but keeping it secret meant risking the conviction of someone who might be innocent. The team gathered in silence, each person weighing the cost of every possible decision. Some argued that the letter could be a hoax designed to derail the trial, while others insisted the precise, unreleased details proved its authenticity. Outside the courthouse, reporters sensed the mounting tension, but had no idea of the storm raging inside. Jurors remained sequestered, unaware that the evidence they were being asked to evaluate might no longer tell the whole story. Every new development, the mysterious photographs, the foreign fibers, the hidden storage unit, the secret camera, seemed to point toward a careful architect of chaos, someone who wanted to remain invisible while ensuring the wrong person took the blame. As closing arguments approached, the prosecutors faced a choice that no training could prepare them for. They could present the confession and risk dismantling months of work, or they could remain silent and push forward with a case that now felt perilously incomplete. The lead attorney sat alone that night, staring at the envelope under the dim light of the office lamp, understanding that either path could let the real killer walk free. When the court reconvened the next morning, no one outside the prosecution team knew which decision had been made. The question lingered like a shadow over every word spoken in the courtroom. Would justice be served? Or would the truth remain buried with the secrets that had haunted the case from the beginning?